Ang susunod na programa ay rated PG. Patnubay at gabay ng magulang ay kailangan sa mga batang manonood.
Hello, good morning. It's Saturday again, no? So magandang umaga po sa lahat ng mga tagapakinig at nanonood sa ating pong regular program, ang Doctors on Air, no? Naku, we're very fortunate this morning, no? At meron tayong guest. Pero mamaya na lang ko sa inyo papakilala kung sino siya. And then we're very excited to have him on board. At bago ang lahat ay gusto muna natin magbumate, no? Sa ating pong mga boss, no? Kay Mayora Maika, good morning. Alam ko makikinig siya ngayon because meron tayong guest na napaka-important para po sa panahon na ito, no? Of course, si POJ, of course, si Ma'am Ria, napaka-supportive po sa atin. And would like to give first of all yung updates, no? Updates po sa ating pong mga kababayan na ginaganap po. Gaganapin po ngayong umaga sa City Hall ang booster vaccination po ng mga health workers. Ay nag-start na po kami last Saturday at second batch po ngayon. At mag-start po mamayang 10 o'clock. So, and of course, I would like to inform gusto natin ipaliwanag sa ating mga kababayan ang aming po mga programs. Lalong-lalo na po yung electronic consulta package, no, na-approve na po ng PhilHealth. Andrew, ano nga? Yan po, ang Cabanatuan, MV Gallego, Cabanatuan City General Hospital ay for implementation na po ng e-consulta package. Ano po bang ibig sabihin nito? So, yan po, ang PhilHealth Consulta Package ay kinilala po na pinalawak na primary care benefit ng PhilHealth. So, ibig sabihin po nito, lahat po na magpapakonsulta sa ating outpatient department ay babayaran na po ng PhilHealth. Hindi po kamukha dati na ito po ay wala pong bayad, kundi ito po ay extended services ng PhilHealth upang sa ganun po ay mapaigting, no, ang mga outpatient package po natin. So, okay. Yan po ang ating mga unang-unang mga updates po sa ating pag-abot sa ating pong City Hospital. And medyo excited na kami. So, we'd like to take this opportunity sa guest natin ngayon, Leslie, no? Tsaka June. At ito ay buti tayo ay pinaunlakan, no, ating isang guest. Ito po ay siya po ay isang taga-Cabanatuan, no. At pinagmamalaki po nating lahat, no. At just to give you a brief backgrounder, no. Siya po ay anak ng ng dalawang doktor, no, na pioneer po dito sa ating lungsod, no. Kung natatandaan nyo June nung araw, way back in the early 60s, nagdatingan dito, Leslie, yung mga galing sa States na mga espesyalista. At kasama na po rito yung aking ama at ang aming po mga kamag-anak, sila Dr. Santarina, Dr. Marcelo, sila, of course, Dr. Paes, no? Sila po ang mga iuna-una nag-practice dito. Nung time na yun, Leslie, ENT pa eh. So, and I remember during that time when I was still, yung mga kapatid niya, siguro, hindi mga kalaro-laro namin, no? Si Ricky, at saka sila Sasa. And I still remember yung una nilang bahay at saka yung kanilang clinic sa may tapat ng tennis court sa Del Pilar, no? And then, during that time, mga bata pa kami, madalas kami maglaro. At siguro itong guest natin, medyo bata. Siya yata ang pinaka-youngest eh. So, but anyway, and then, from then, so, yun nga, yung kanyang father, si Tito Lino, saka si Tita Paning, nagpa-practice sila yung mga pioneer ng Nueva Ecija Doctors Hospital. No? At isa po ipagmalaki, no, na ang ating guest ngayon na nasa Amerika, no? At kakapanayim natin siya through Zoom, Zoom meeting. So, bago ang lahat, gusto namin siyang pakita yung kanyang CV, no? Andrew, pakita. Okay? Yan po, ang ating pong guest ngayon is si Dr. Armando Philip Espaes. Siya po ay isang Chief of Base State Health Division of Infectious Disease. At ang kanya pong educational background, makikita niyo po, ay BS, Major in Physical Therapy, magna cum laude, University of Santo Tomas. Ang kanya pong MD degree is also magna cum laude. Parang kami ni Jun Rosales yan eh. Wish lang namin. UST rin. Of course, he had his training in internal medicine. Of course, internship din sa Cleveland Clinic Foundation sa Cleveland, Ohio. And then fellowship at Tufts University of School of Medicine, Bay State Medical Center sa Springfield, Massachusetts. So, yan po ang ating pong guest ngayon. Pakibaba mo pa. Of course, ang kanya pong academic appointments, Assistant Professor, Department of Medicine, University of Massachusetts Medical School, Bay State, Springfield, Massachusetts. And then, Adjunct Assistant Professor din po siya ng Department of Medicine with the same institution. And of course, yan po ang kanyang maraming clinical academic appointments. And again, meron pa susunod dyan, Andrew. Okay. Siya ang chief ngayon, presently, ng Infectious Disease Division, Department of Medicine, Bay State Medical Center. And then, madami po siyang mga position, lalong-lalo na po sa infectious disease na alam na po natin na kailangan ngayon, no? And then, meron pa rin, isa pa. Honors. Yan, yung Marquis Huso in America 2021 to 2022. Outstanding Alumnus, College of Rehabilitative Sciences, University of Santo Tomas, Maxwell Finland Award for Excellence in Research, Edward H. Cass Award for Clinical Excellence in Massachusetts Infectious Disease Society, tsaka sa Physician Board Examination, number 4 po siya, no? During that time. Makikita mo, 1999 eh. So, ang kanyang gumraduate siya during that time, and then he went to the States to pursue his specialty training. Okay, so without further ado, we'd like to welcome Dr. Armando Philip Paez. Hello, Armand. Good morning. Good evening pala dyan.
Hi, good morning sa inyong lahat.
Hi.
I'm really glad na nandito ako sa programa ng Kabanatuan. Ako'y nagagalak talaga na makapanayam sa inyo.
Okay. Arman, I remember during that time, siguro nga, medyo bata ka pa noon, no? We used to play together, si Ricky. Kumusta na si Ricky?
Mabuti naman, nandun sila sa Texas.
I know, nasa Air Force siya, di ba? He's also an MD, di ba?
Retired na siya.
Retired na.
Sa Air Force.
Yes, Air Force, yes. Anyway, we're very glad, and mga kababayan, ang ating pong guest ngayon ay taga-Kabanatuan, no? So, lumaki po siya dito, at dito po siya spend his primary education. Saan ka nag-aral dito, Arman?
Sa CIC.
CIC,
Graduate ako ng
see?
CIC.
Yeah.
1983. Pagkatapos noon, nag-seminaryo pa ako.
Parehas tayo.
1 taon. Tapos, nagpunta ako ng Ateneo High School. Nag-transfer ako. Tapos doon ako graduate ng high school. And then after that, sa University of Santo Tomas.
Yes. Okay. So, nakita namin, Arman, no, because of the pandemic now, no, mayroon tayong guest ngayon, no. We'd like to introduce to you ating pong panelist, no. Unahin natin si Dr. Leslie De La Cruz. She's an infectious disease pediatrics. And also Dr. May Sebian. May, are you there? Hello, May.
Hello, Doc.
Hi.
Good morning.
Yes. So, she's an infectious disease also for adult. Kaya lang, nasa bakasyon ka ata, May. And then, and we'd like to take this opportunity na meron tayong resource person ngayon, si Arman, no? And then, of course, si June Rosales, ating pong pulmonologist. Okay.
Morning.
Yeah. Arman, can you give us an update sa situation dyan sa ano? I know Massachusetts is one of the lowest ang incidence ng COVID during the the surge last year and today.
Alam mo naman ang pandemya, it's almost 2 years na. So, we have our own share of number of increase of cases dito sa Massachusetts. And the efforts para makontrol yung pandemic, we coordinate with the state government in order to deploy yung mga infection control measures, mask mandates, and as well as a treatment para sa mga nagkakasakit.
So how's the ano now? Mukhang may surge uli dyan, di ba? According to the reports.
Yes. Exactly. So, after nung Delta surge, which is just recently, so we had a downslope or downtrend ng mga cases, and then dahil ngayon dito, alam mo naman, lumalamig na dahil sa winter time, so people spend more time indoors sa bahay. Kaya importante yung ventilation, yun isa sa mga factors sa transmission ng virus. So, because of that, mas marami nagsa-celebrate indoors, lalo na mga holidays, Thanksgiving, at saka ngayon magpapasko na.
Yeah.
We are experiencing a surge, or at least an upward trend of cases.
Do you attribute that, Arman, sa, let's say, I'm seeing in the news, na they're not wearing mask anymore, no?
Yes and no. Depende kasi ang style kasi dito is, they allow each town to make decisions.
Okay.
Depende dun sa mandate ng governor ng Massachusetts to allow individual approach doon sa town kasi iba-ibang number of level of cases.
Okay.
Depende sa town. So
how about the critical how about yung mga critical cases nyo? Is it going up again or is it is it slowing down?
Yes, that's a very good question kasi as you know dito marami mga vaccines, right?
Yeah.
So not everyone is taking advantage of that. And so yung mga mabababa ang rates ng vaccination, doon mas vulnerable sila sa infection. And so may mga risk factors for high severe illness like mga may diabetes, high blood pressure, sila yung mga na-admit sa ospital. Pero ang nakikita namin dito, kahit na nabakunahan din, kung matagal na sila nabakunahan, di sila nakakuha ng booster, kung minsan nagkakasakit sila ng malubha, tapos na-admit pa rin sa ospital. And we're talking about, let's say, sa ospital, mga 20 to 30% maaaring bakunado din sila, pero mahihina yung katawan nila kaya di sila na ospital.
Or is it more of the virus load or really the individual immunocompromised patients?
Not necessarily yung virus kasi dito ang 99.9% siguro ganun din sa Pilipinas is Delta is the circulating variant.
Yes.
So that is the one single variant that's circulating. So we know that. So kung sasabihin mo na yun ang dahilan, pare-pareho naman yan same variant. Ang nakakaiba lang yung host. Yung alam mo naman na sakit, it's between the interaction between the virus, the pathogen, and the host.
Okay.
So yung interaction na yun that can produce illness, depende kung mas bata, most of the time mild ang illness. Pero pagka tumatanda ka, it's a risk factor for a more severe illness.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. No? I mean here, mga kababayan, kamukha nung sinasabi ng ating guest ngayon na expert, kailangan po talaga ang vaccination, ano? So, yung pong vaccine, alam mo Arman, before the vaccination, there is kasi vaccine hesitancy before because alam niya na narinig mo before yung Dengvac siya. Scare lalong-lalo na sa pediatric age group. And it's very hard really to counter that mindset, no? But again, now, medyo maganda na rin ang response nila ngayon, no? And now, kaya nga sinasabi namin sa mga kababayan natin na magpabakuna na kayo. Anything, sabi nga namin, all of these vaccines are safe, they are free, and it works. So, yun ang gusto namin ipa-advocate sa ating pong mga nakikinig ngayon, lalong-lalo na sa mga kababayan natin na nagkakaroon pa ng hesitancy pagdating sa bakuna. And do you have any questions, Leslie?
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Opo. First, sa lugar niyo po, may mga affected din pong bata because of their adult count, yung mga parents. So, malaki pa rin po yung walang bakuna sa inyo pong lugar.
Yes, compared to adults, mas mababa yung porsyento na nababakunahan yung mga eligible na mga bata. Naintindihan namin yun dahil kung minsan meron din dito silang pangamba na baka maapektuhan yung bata. Mas late din kasi yung grupo nila na naaral para sa bakuna. But as we get more experience, real world experience, yung mga magulang nagiging mas kumpante na silang magpabakuna. And you brought up a good point about household transmission because marami mga nag-aral tungkol dun sa pag-transmit. Many of the transmission really happens in the household.
Okay.
Kasama mo. Kaya nga kuminsan ang mga policies is binabase sa one household, versus another household kung magmamask kayo o hindi. So, ang guide dito is that kung merong hindi bakunado doon sa grupo sa household, kasi magkakasama kayo sa bahay.
Correct, yeah.
You share the same table, the bathrooms, and everything. So, we assume na kung magkakasakit isa doon, malahat sila magkakasakit. So, this is treated as a unit. So, and that's when you make policies, you have to consider that as well.
Okay. May, do you have any question? May?
Hello, Doc. Good morning.
Hi,
Good morning,
good
Doc.
Good morning.
Naririnig naman po ako, Doc.
Yes.
Doc. So, in terms of adults na, Doc, kasi at although hanggang din talaga yung mga healthcare worker dito sa Philippines. So, one of the IAPF recommendations before is the shortened quarantine period. Sa lugar niyo po ba, what do you apply po? Yung 14-day quarantine period sa non-vaccinated? O do you apply po din yung 7 to 10 days quarantine period with high-risk exposure with complete vaccination? Is it safe na po ba na kompletuhin lang 7 days quarantine period sa mga patient, sa mga high-risk exposure na may complete vaccination?
Para sa mga healthcare
Or
workers?
still 14 days po?
Para sa healthcare workers? Or?
Yes,
Okay.
one of our problem. Yes, Doc.
So, the way, alam mo naman, just like managing yung exposure risk, right? After exposure, it's really about risk management and what you can tolerate in terms of the risk of developing the disease. So, ang importante kasi sa healthcare worker, pagka kasi pinabalik mo yan sa trabaho, there will be, kasi sa healthcare setting, di ba? So, there will be a chance to expose not only their co-workers, but also yung mga pasyente na may sakit na,
Correct.
nagagampan ng COVID. So, very careful tayo dyan sa pagbabalik ng healthcare worker na maaaring na-expose. Ngayon, so, merong studies na ginagawa tungkol dito. Ano ba yung risk na alam mo naman ang incubation period, ng median incubation period, meaning to say yung on average, no? For COVID-19 to develop after exposure is around 4 to 5 days. Yun yung median number of days bago mag-develop ang symptoms. Ngayon, but it's a spread, up to 14 days pwede mag-develop ng symptoms. So ngayon, with utilizing a testing, by day 5, kung mag-test ka after exposure, kung negative yon, ang general guidance ito, pwede mo makat yung quarantine days mo by 7 days. So the risk of you developing symptoms or getting infected due to COVID, we're
Less.
talking about like 5% or less
Less, yeah.
na ma-develop ang symptoms. So is that something you can tolerate, that risk? 5%, miski sa research, that's almost like considered significant. Diba? Parang ganon. 5%. Ngayon, kung i-extend mo ng 14 days, is almost, zero risk, because that's the 14 days quarantine. So ngayon, as we learn more about yung viral transmission, we adjust this ruling or policies in order to be practical. Kasi naman, essential worker ang
Correct.
healthcare worker, di ba? So, yun, binabalansin natin yun. Parang ganon. So, in that regard, there's no really right or wrong answer. It's just managing the risk for an exposure to develop COVID-19 and how much you need that person in the critical situation.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the reason why may ask this question because there's a lot of shortage of nurses now, especially manning our COVID wards, And one of the reasons why we're trying to look into the possibility of shortening the quarantine period is that so that we can have more people to man our wards.
And then I just want to interject, Doc Bing.
Yeah.
Of course, vaccination really protects one from serious illness,
Yes, that's true.
hospitalization, and death. One thing I want to clarify, a lot of people get confused, ayaw ko magpabakuna dahil na-infect din naman ako, But when we set a target, why you need to be vaccinated, we have to think about what you actually want to accomplish. So initially, we want everyone to get vaccinated para hindi sila magkasakit ng lubha at ma-hospital. Pero it doesn't guarantee na hindi ko ma-infect.
Correct,
Ma-infect ka rin,
yeah.
pero mild lang, diba? Mild. But the problem is that, for example, sa Delta, mild infection nga, pero you can still transmit that to other people without masking and everything, So, na-experience natin, kahit na mild na transmit mo pa rin, so marami pa rin kaso.
Correct,
diba?
correct.
So, there comes the booster soft-like strategy na we want to increase the target na, first of all, to prevent infection to set in. So that will help in curbing the transmission. And of course, again, multi-layer yan. Vaccination is just one of those measures. You have masking,
Okay.
social distancing as well. So if you combine that all together, then, that will be an effective strategy to, slow down and curb the pandemic.
Correct. Dr. Arman, what is it really mandatory now for all vaccines to give a booster dose after 6 months, or is there any study indicating that we have to have a booster dose in that particular time?
So that is really a very loaded question. So I can probably explain that in a way na siguro mas madaling intindihan natin. So, and we can go back to how it unfolded,
Okay.
para maintindihan natin yung strategy. So, initially with the limited vaccines, we want everyone to get vaccinated because that will, again, it will prevent serious infection, right? Ngayon, yung booster shot, and this is, of course, we're learning this during the pandemic as well. So, imagine mo yun, nagtatrabaho ka na, nakakasakit ka na, nag-aaral ka pa, di ba?
Correct, correct.
Then you have to study how the virus behaves, which is also changing because of the variants, right?
And the mutations.
So, later on, na-realize na bumababa yung antibody level na nagpe-prevent ang infection. Now, what is the complicated piece of information here is that yung antibody na na-measure natin sa laboratory, isa lang yan sa mga bagay na part of the immune system na nagwo-work at nagpo-protect din sa infection na dulot din ng pagbabakuna. Yun na tawag nilang memory T cells and B cells. Meaning to say, pag bumaba yung antibody level mo, which is about 5 to 6 months yung nakita nila, pagka pwede ma-infect yung tao na yon, kung matanda, pwede magkasakit pa rin na malabwa, although less likely because of the vaccination. But habang tumatagal na malayo pa dun sa primary series of vaccination, the chances of you getting even sicker is greater. But one thing that's difficult to predict and to dahil ng mga scientists inaaral pa nila, yung bang memory T cells and B cells. So, mahirap kasi i-measure yun eh. Kumbaga, yung memory B cells and T cells, pag na-expose yung tao ulit sa virus, mas mabilis mag-produce ng antibodies. That's number one, that's the memory B cells. And number two, meron kang T cells na ma-atake dun sa virus, pinapatay niya.
Okay.
And that is in addition to the what we call neutralizing antibodies. Yung bang, pag nandiyan yung virus, kakapit na yung antibody, neutralize niya. Yun yung mine-measure natin normally. So, ngayon, yung one piece of information na nakita na, yung neutralizing antibody, bumababa yun, mga 5 to 6 months, katulad sa study sa Israel.
Okay.
Nakita nila, nare-infect ulit yung ibang tao. Particularly mga matatanda, kasi mag-age din yung immune system natin.
Correct,
diba?
correct.
So, ngayon, yung mga bata, ma-infect din, pero mild lang sila. Ngayon, yung strategy ngayon na since more available yung vaccines, nakita natin yung Delta, kahit na nabakunahan ka, dahil another piece of another factor din yun kung bakit nagkakaroon ng mga surges. Nung inaral yung vaccine nung naaprubahan siya o na-authorize, iba na ngayon yung Delta. Yung Delta nag-adapt na sa sitwasyon. So ngayon, meron ka na mas matinding virus, bumababa pa yung immune system mo, kaya nagkakasakit. Ngayon, pag inalaw mo, kahit na hindi ka ma-hospital, matatransmit mo pa rin yung infection sa ibang tao. And wala nang katapusan, di ba? So, kaya dumating yung booster strategy. Ano? Yun naman ang ano doon ngayon. Siyempre, kung we have a lot of vaccines, okay lang yun. Pero kung sa buong mundo, kulang pa yung ibang bansa, ang nangyayari niyan, yung mga hindi nababakunahan o ay magpabakuna, nagkakaroon ng maraming transmission, nagkakaroon ng bagong variant. Katulad na ngayon, may Omicron variant na. So, which has adapted to the, to the situation ngayon. Hindi naman na ngayon ang ating panibagong threat.
So, for the sake of our listeners, just like to recap what Dr. Arman mentioned, so ang virus po kasi meron siyang lifespan. But because of the adaptability to stay, nagkakaroon po yun ng mutation o nagbabago ng anyo. Parang si POJ lang yan. Minsan nagbabago lang. so yun po ang nagiging challenging dun sa mga treatment kamukha ng vaccination. So yun po binabanggit ni Dr. Arman. Mga kababayan, so importante po, i-recap ko lang, ang pagbabakuna, So wag nating alalahanin yung sinasabi ng iba na makakasama sa atin. But again, sabi ko nga, it is very mandatory na magkaroon lahat. Ito ay role na natin bilang Pilipino. It is our responsibility to our fellow men to have ourselves vaccinated. Una-una, for our own sake, para hindi tayo magkaroon ng serious diseases or magkaroon ng serious case ang gawa ng COVID. At the same time, makaiwas tayo dun sa transmissibility nito. So, yan po mga kababayan. So, any more question, June? Bago tayo pumunta sa Omicron. So, just to give us a free flow.
Omicron yung tatanong ko.
Omicron na ba? Sige.
Okay, Dr. Paez, Doc June po, pulmonologist, magandang gabi po dyan. Opo, yun lang po. Nasagot niyo na po kanina na dominant pa rin ang Delta, but we have to ask this dahil mukhang may scare na po, media-wise, doon sa Omicron. Please comment on Omicron, anything or everything about Omicron. Po. Thank you very much po.
Yes. Thank you for that question. So, yung Omicron variant kasi, alam na banggit na ni Doc Bing na nagbabago yung anyo, di ba? Kasi yung virus na to, pagka nagre-replicate, wala kasi siyang masyadong proofreading, yung bang natural lang sa kanya mag-mutate. Ngayon ang virus, pagka nag-mutate, it has this what we call trying to survive and the pandemic, so it will try to adapt to the situation. Ngayon, nag-accumulate siya ng mutations. Yung mga genetic mutations na yun ang nagiging dahilan kung bakit nagbabago siya ng anyo. Ngayon, ang problema dito sa Omicron is that yung nakita nilang mga mutations doon sa spike protein, which is the protein that is attaching to the host cell, napakarami. It's more than 30 mutations. Normally, mga ibang variants, mga 7 or 8 mutations na. Ito, 30. So, ngayon, dahil bago yung mga mutations na inaaral pa ng mga scientists, merong mga signature mutations na katulad sa ibang variant na, number 1, nag-i-increase ng transmissibility. Number 2, related din na nag-evade siya doon sa mga treatment na available. Or yung sa immune sa mga antibodies produced by the vaccines. Dahil may mutation na siya, hindi na kaya ng atakihin ng antibody na produced ng vaccine. At kahit na yung mga natural infection na may antibodies, nakita nila na baka hindi din effective. So ito, inaaral pa nito, hindi natin alam kung gaano ka-apekto yung protection ng vaccine na even natural infection with this type of variant. So sabi nila, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to have more determination, solidify it. However, based on computer modeling, available information, they already know, and nagsabi na yung isang kumpanya na we predict that it will be affected, but we just don't know how much.
Is it, Arman, is it as virulent as Delta, ang Omicron?
So you're asking kung associated siya sa more severe illness?
More severe, yeah.
So, based on limited information, as you know, ito nauna na-report to sa South Africa, sa Botswana and then South Africa. What they found is that yung number of cases doon among younger individuals, so many of those are mild infections and some of them are asymptomatic infections. So, by that alone, maaari mo sabihin, mild lang siya, madali matransmit pero mild, diba?
Okay.
But then we need more numbers for cases to study. How about yung mga older folks? Will it result to severe infection? So, kasi meron din tayong mga ibang variants na based on the genetic code, ito mukhang mag-evade ng treatment. Pero, hindi naman siya nag-pan out na katulad ng Delta. Diba? But Delta, by itself, it's not associated with, specifically evading the immune system or escape. Tawag na vaccine escape. Pero madali siya matransmit. As I said, kung meron kang risk factor for severe illness, kahit na sipon-sipon lang, kung minsan na-hospital ka na. Diba? Dahil may asthma ka, mataba ka, ayan. So, kaya yung sinasabi mong severe illness, it really depends on the host. Anong grupo ng tao yung pinag-usapan natin? Yung mga matatanda ba? Yung mga cancer ba? Yun, kailangan pa nilang aralin na.
Thank you. Very, very, very interesting. So, like for example, when we had our surge here, kami nila June, kami nila Leslie's been treating COVID patients also. Nakikita namin yung cytokine storm. I mean really very, di ba, once it sets in on the 5th or 6th day, talagang going down eh. I mean, Arman, what are the parameters in treatment ba during that nung kayo?
Yeah. I'm glad that you're touching treatment because, I also want to mention that later on. Hopefully, during this time, we can talk about the future treatment and what's
Yeah.
going to be coming because it's very exciting and there's really hope, in trying to, solve this pandemic and treat people who get sick or, with this infection. So going back to the infection. So para maintindihan natin yung treatment, kailangan natin maintindihan din kung paano ka nagkakasakit ng
Okay,
COVID.
yeah.
Ano nangyayari, di ba? So, normally, yung first phase ng pagkakasakit ng COVID, yung virus nagre-replicate, dumadami siya. So, usually sa nasopharynx, sa paghinga. Ngayon, nag-a-attach siya ngayon doon sa receptor na tinatawag. Meron tayong mga receptor sa ibang parte ng katawan, particularly sa respiratory tract. Pero meron ding ibang parte ng organ sa katawan na meron na. So, nag-a-attach yung virus and then yung virus, papasok siya doon sa katawan, sa cells, no? And then, magmumultiply siya, gagamitin niya yung host to multiply. And then, what's gonna happen is that it will stimulate inflammatory response
Action, yeah.
sa host. So, yung host, and this is something that kahit nasa medical school, naturo nila na kung minsan hindi yung virus na nagdudulot ng sakit Hindi yung virus directly nagdudulot ng sakit. Yung katawan mo nagdudulot ng sakit sa kayo. Dahil nilalabanan niya yung virus. Ngayon, dahil bago yung virus, hindi pa nila nakikita to ng
Recognized, yeah.
humanity. Galit na galit yung katawan. Diba? So it will, and we still don't understand this. May mga tao na talagang predisposed na siguro, meron kayo namimit ng mga taong magagalitin, di ba? May mga ganun din yung katawan ng tao. Meron yung mga magagalitin, meron naman yung mga mapayapa. Ngayon, kung magagalitin yung katawan, it's overwhelming response, doon nagsha-shutdown, natawag nila cytokine storm. Patataas ang lagnat, tapos nagre-release ng mga interferon sa katawan, yung mga yan ang panlaban ng katawan sa virus kasi kailangan niyang patayin di ba? Ngayon along the way, the body becomes a casualty of war.
Yeah.
So ngayon doon na yung inflammation will lead into thrombosis, yung blood clot sa dugo, nagsha-shutdown yung lung, may na-intubate. So ngayon, yung treatment, depende ngayon doon sa phase ng infection. So initially, kung bago pa lang infection, at na-detect na siya, kaya importanteng testing sa maaga,
Correct,
huwag maghintay
yeah.
hanggang miss ka pa. Pagka medyo sipon ka na, magpa-test ka na kaagad. Because, especially, pagka naging available na yung mga oral medications for COVID-19, importante na ma-detect early. So, test and treat, di ba? Parang ganun ang strategy. So, pagka within 5 days, for example, yung mga inaral na bagong gamot ngayon for oral medication, it can help decrease the viral replication, stop it. And hopefully, and the key here is the hope is that the body will stop reacting to it and later on produce severe illness. Ngayon, kung pagka naman ang available na dito, yung natawag nila monoclonal antibody, which is a manufactured antibody sa laboratory, it's a pure antibody directed to the spike protein ng coronavirus. And there are several, antibodies available, monoclonal. Binibigay din to within 10 days at the start of symptoms. During that time, mataas kasi yung level ng virus sa katawan. Pag binigay mo yung antibody, nagbabind siya doon, inactivate niya.
Okay.
So that is the purpose of that. Pero pag lumampas ka na sa certain time, kahit na ibigay mo yun,
Hindi na.
effective
Oo,
yun.
sa timing din.
Exactly. So yung second phase is the inflammatory response. Yung
Okay.
natawag nilang cytokine storm. Yun naman, ibang gamot naman ang ibinibigay doon. Ang gamot naman doon yung para i-tame yung inflammation, para hindi masyadong bumigay yung katawan ng host,
Yeah.
di ba?
That's why we're monitoring all the inflammatory markers as part of the treatment regimen also.
Exactly,
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. Yun ang parang dalawang konsepto na importante maintindihan. Kaya dapat, pagka sa tingin mong mukhang may sakit ka, kailangan magpa-test ka na maaga.
Correct. Oh, yeah. So, yun
kung
nga.
dahil pagka hinintay mo yung malubha ka na, the chances of you really making it, after COVID is, chances is becoming smaller.
That's very unfortunate nga because most of our patients here, because of the, yung denial, yung ganun ba, Arman? Very unfortunate. Minsan we get patients that are really into the severe forms na because of the, self-medication, at the same time, hesitancy in testing, and of course, yung ostracizing, yung feeling of to be ostracized by the community, having one, ayaw na lumapit sa inyo ng kapitbahay mo. So that's the scenario that we experience here.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point, Doc. So that's why yung segment mo, yung programa mo dito, is very important for people to know the right information, based on science. Kasi yun yung magbibigay sa atin ng direksyon.
Correct.
Nobody can give direction where we're gonna go. It's the virus the behavior of the virus, the pandemic will actually dictate where we are going. So, the more informed we are as individual, we can make informed decisions, diba?
Yes.
That's why information is very powerful, knowledge is very powerful.
Yes. Actually, before we start kanina, we're talking about the monoclonal antibody. But Jun would like to ask question regarding the... Kasi we're trying to go to the protocol now eh.
Actually,
si Leslie ba?
Si Leslie Magana
yeah.
ng
You mentioned about the monoclonal.
Yes, sir. Di ba po meron ng available dyan po? Tama po ba? Yung post-exposure prophylaxis ng... Yes, sir. Apo.
Monoclonal, yeah. Yeah, so actually I am one of, the leaders in our group dito sa parte ng Massachusetts, who is the clinical lead for our monoclonal antibody program. So I'm very active and very familiar with this, even in the clinical operations. So ano yung specific question doon sa post-exposure prophylaxis indication or treatment or
Yes, sir.
any specific, or you just want to...
Sir, sinisimulan niyo
In
na
general.
po ba dyan yun? Is it available there, yung post-exposure prophylaxis? And is it available to everybody who gets exposed with COVID dyan po?
Kasama sa protocol nyo ba yan, Arman? Once it is really pumasok ka doon sa criteria and you start giving it also?
Yes. So, as you know, nabanggit ko nga kanina, yung monoclonal antibody is, it's laboratory-produced antibodies, na it's a concentrated basically na antibodies na binibigay doon sa mga nagkakasakit ng COVID-19 early in the infection, as I mentioned to you, na it tries to bind, and neutralize the virus, while it's replicating. And with the same token, kung na-expose ka, maaaring nag-incubate, di ba? Yung virus bago magkaroon ng symptoms. And we talk about 4 to 5 days ang median time, of incubation. So ngayon, yung sa post-exposure prophylaxis, inaral nila yung monoclonal antibody. They found, just like those who develop COVID-19 and receive this treatment early, it's also effective in preventing development of symptoms kung ibibigay ito dun sa mga na-expose. Ngayon, ang question dito is, what is your definition of real exposure?
Yeah,
diba? So, dito is, ang indication dito is unvaccinated, okay? Unvaccinated, close contact. Ano ba yung close contact? It's basically within 6 feet without mask, 15 minutes exposure in 24 hours. If you're unvaccinated, you got that real exposure, that's a definite case of COVID-19. you have risk factors for or severe illness. Mahaba yun,
Comorbidities,
maraming
yeah.
listahan yun. Pero, for example dito, yung obesity, yung diabetes, high blood pressure, yun ang mga risk factors for severe illness. Qualified kang makareceive ng post-exposure prophylaxis. Ngayon, yun sa mga nabakunahan naman, with the same scenario, kung ikaw ay immunosuppressed o kung uminom ka ng gamot na katulad ng mga transplant patients or may rheumatoid
Dialysis
arthritis
patients,
ka,
is it?
ng gamot, maaari kang makabenefit din sa post-exposure prophylaxis na to ng monoclonal.
So yan po mga kababayan, so ang dinidiscuss po ni Dr. Arman is the new mode of treatment na. And ito po ay mga makabago. Actually, we're now starting it, di ba Jun? We're starting to...
Yes, sir. Actually po, we just finished the training with Roche Hexagon, no? We are gonna start this very soon po sa ating institution po sa Samaritan.
Okay. And again, we'd like to welcome...
Ronapreb po, sir.
Anong generic nun?
Kasi Ribimab saka Indebimab po.
Mga tongue twister yan. So, dito ang pangalan. Mamaya may spelling contest tayong lahat. Pero, dito, Regeneron dito. Ngayon, pwedeng subcutaneous din yan. Yung product.
Talaga? Wow.
Yeah. Inaral nila yan. So, kuminsan, kung hindi ka makakuha ng vein, pwedeng injection subcutaneous. So,
okay, Arman, we'd like to welcome our City Health Officer, si Dr. Army Adiser. Siya ang aming lead person pagdating sa vaccination and testing dito sa ating syudad. Welcome, Dr. Army.
Good morning po, Doc Bing Hoson. Good morning po kay Dr. Paes and sa atin po mga bisita ngayong umaga.
Medyo na late kasi medyo marami silang binakuna gabi.
Apologies po, pasensya na.
And do you have any questions any more? Sige, Leslie.
Sir, may magbabago po ba sa diagnostics natin in terms of Omicron?
Genome
that's a very
sequencing.
good question. So, galing ng question na yan. So, ngayon, as you know, maraming plataforma yung pagtetest, di ba? So, meron tayong antigen testing, meron tayong nucleic acid amplification testing, tapos meron din antibody testing. So, medyo kuminsan nakakalito ko ano yung ginagamit natin. Pero, specifically dito, for active infection, it's either we use an antigen testing or PCR, yung natawag nilang PCR testing, nucleic acid amplification testing. So, depende doon sa target, yung PCR na ginagamit, depende doon sa target nung primer, nung ginagamit sa PCR, pwede siya maapektuhan nung mutations doon sa variant. Okay? Kasi remember, yung spike protein is, has several mutations, more than 30 mutations.
Correct.
So, ngayon, yung ginagamit nila doon sa South Africa, the reason why they had a clue na variant ito is meron silang S gene dropout. So, meron silang dalawang target, nagagamit nila yung Tacman PCR. Meron isang target, kasi dalawa yung target, may isang target na hindi nagsisignal. Isa lang yun nagko-confirm. Because yung S gene, as I said, may mutation. So ngayon, ba't hindi ito nagsisignal? So they ran the full sequence, genetic sequencing, and then they found this variant, nakakaiba. So hindi lang naman siya unique doon sa Omicron, but because other variants also had the same S protein mutation na hindi ma-detect. So, but other platforms of testing, hindi yun ang target, hindi yung protein. They target the conserved region of the genetic code,
Genome sequencing.
So ngayon, madedetect nila yon, pero hindi mo malalaman kung variant siya.
Yeah.
The only way to know is to do a full genome sequencing. Si-sequence generally. Ngayon, unless na mag-develop ka ng test specifically for that. So I know so it's a loaded question, but yes, it will affect it, and still being studied in terms of in terms of how it's going to affect surveillance and testing. Because of many platforms, it may have different effects on different testing platforms.
Yes, Army.
Yes, may kasunod lang po akong question regarding that particular issue also. So what do you think, in your opinion, sir, is the outlook in terms of COVID response, considering po the mutations, considering yung variation, paglabas ng bago, kada may bago na naman, and then testing versus vaccination? Kasi ngayon, full blast po tayo ng vaccination. Meron bang looming threat na magkakaroon ng issue itong paglabas ng mga bagong mutation? Or totoo din po ba, meron din po bang katotohanan yung sinasabi nila na eventually magiging parang flu na lang siya? Or yung ating mga every year na binabakuna nila laban sa flu, magiging ganun na lang din po ba siya eventually?
Army, ang tanong mo kay Dr. Arman, ano ba ang fearless forecast mo daw?
Yes, sir. I was late. I don't know if it was already asked, but that is my concern.
Fearless forecast daw, Arman.
Okay. So siguro kung meron lang akong bolang kristal, tatabihin ko sa inyo. Pero ang take ko dito ganito, So I was just reflecting on this as every day, every hour, I'm always in the Twitter feed and all this, sa mga information regarding Omicron. So what is really important is what we can do now, right? So we know we have evidence to suggest that the currently authorized vaccines will offer some level of
Protection.
not yung variant protection. Because the reason being is that as I mentioned earlier, yung immune system, the reason why we're still here in the world as a human being, we actually adapted the environment, kung ano man sa kunayon na what, and the evolution is part of the evolution. Ngayon, yung immune system natin din nag-a-adapt. So pag binigyan mo ng vaccine, nag-i-elicit ng immune response, some of the antibodies are directed towards the conserved regions of the virus. Meaning to say, may pareho naman silang coronavirus, nagkakaiba nga lang. Yung immune response mo from T cells, B cells, somehow it will still offer some protection by the vaccination. Okay? It's not the ideal protection. Inaaral pa nila kung gaano ka-apekto yung immunity budulot ng vaccination. Most likely, they will need to redesign some of the vaccines in order to specifically target that. Again, yung mga scientists na eksperto dito, inaaral nila yung kung recommended ba yun o hindi. They don't want to commit anything yet because it's still being studied. So that's number one. So ang masasabi ko, the way to approach this is still, get the vaccination if you haven't. Get the booster shot because you need really a high level and you need those memory cells to really get stimulated so that they will be ready in case you get exposed. Because it will offer some level of protection. That's the number one. Number two, alam na natin yung masking, right? It works. More recently, I know that there have been some studies. Before, wala pa tayong science behind masking, how much actually protects one, decreasing the transmission. So about 50% it can actually prevent transmission. So doing masking, social distancing in high-risk situations. So ano ba yung mga high-risk situations? Pagka mataas yung kaso sa community, the chances of you getting it is higher. Number two, kung nasa public indoor setting ka, na hindi mo alam yung mga nakaupo doon sa restaurant, may COVID pala, you don't know those people, then I think it's really recommended that you mask up. Ngayon, kung ikaw sa household, sa bahay mo lang, hindi mo na kailangan kasi kung yung risk is low. It's not zero, but the risk is very low. I like to indoor public setting. So, yung second question naman tungkol doon sa flu, ang siguro you are alluding to ano ba mangyayari sa COVID-19. Ang prediction ng mga scientists, it will be like an endemic virus, just like the flu. Meaning to say, it will be circulating all the time, right? And that's another argument na talagang magpabakuna ka na kasi hindi naman mawawala yan, di ba? So, maaaring hindi ka madali this year, 2021, but 2022, baka madali ka, di ba? So, the safe place to do really is to vaccine. Ngayon, kung naghihintay ka pa ng safety data, clinical evidence, ilang milyon na nabakunahan. This is almost like the second year. What else would you want? Sabi nila, hindi pa na-approve, pero authorized na. Ito nga yung vaccine. This is like, it's been used. Your clinical data is more than enough to suggest that it's really very effective preventing serious illness. And if you actually get the booster, it can actually really prevent you from getting infected. So, ngayon, yung endemic, yes, that is the feeling right now that it will be circulating around just like quote-unquote the flu.
Okay. So, Army, how about our vaccination rate in the city now? Ano bang percentage natin ngayon?
Yes, sir. So I have the most recent data. So far po, sir, we have 49%.
49%. Ang target?
This is yung nakakuha na po ng dalawang bakuna, first and second, or dun sa, for the case of J&J, yung first and
dose.
only recommended na full dose.
Ano ang target nyo this year? I mean, before the end of the year?
Actually, nagpe-pray po ako way back last month, 50% man lang. So, mukhang may early Christmas present po ako.
Talaga?
Pero, kasi po ito, I think the 3-day National Vaccination Day contributed to the rise.
Oh, really?
Because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday po, kahit na po holiday nung Tuesday, tuloy-tuloy po nagbakuna po tayo. Yung first day po nasa 8,000 shots.
Okay.
Second day, 6,000, almost 7,000 shots.
That's good.
And almost the same for the last day. So this contributed to the 49%. Kasi previously po nasa 44% lang po tayo. That's for the 2 doses given. Doon sa nakaka-first dose man lang po, nasa 63% na po tayo. So, ibig pong sabihin, kung aabot po tayo ng December, siguro po itong 63% na to, sana man lang 65% naka 2 doses na.
Okay.
Sana.
That's good. Thank you. Arman, there's a lot of text here, no? Doc Bing, ang galing naman ng guest nyo. Meron pala tayong kababayan na really making good, lalong-lalo na sa pandemic na to. We'd like to congratulate po si Dr. Paez for sharing his very much needed information sa panahong ito. So, marami nagte-text, Arman. So, hindi nila alam. Even si Mayor Jay was really surprised when I told him. Yeah.
Meron ba siyang mga kabatch dito or way back nung high school days?
Yung mga
kababata.
Natatandaan mo ng mga contemporary mo daw, Arman?
Oo naman.
Yung mga dating girlfriend ni Arman, gano'n ba?
Yung iba mga nag-abroad na rin, ano? So, batch 1983 ako sa CIC.
Si Danny Calderon, alam ko nasa Cleveland Clinic din yata siya. You remember Dr. Calderon from Cabanatuan also?
One year ahead sa akin.
Sa'yo, no? Di ba? Si Danny, ano?
1 year ahead.
Yeah.
1 year ahead sa akin si Danny.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. So, marami po tayo mga kababayan. But again, sabi, may question si Dr. Acebiel. Siguro medyo mahina yung signal niya eh.
Hello, Doc.
Yan pala.
Yes,
May, come on.
Doc, may question na po ako, no, in terms of management also, no. There are several new drugs kasi, like the antivirals, no, like the COVID pill, molnupiravir, no.
That's right.
So, gusto ko lang tanungin yung experience nyo about its safety and efficacy.
Yeah. Okay. So that's this is like a hot item, kasi recently, which is like November 30, that's like 3 days ago, yung United States FDA advisory panel, they met and reviewed the data on molnupiravir. So molnupiravir, it's an oral agent or pill from Merck, which is studied. And I think the Philippines also, the Move Out study, it's also, Philippines is participating site dito sa molnupiravir.
Yes.
Yeah. So the way it works is that, and this is somewhat, some people are talking about this, it actually introduces errors in the genetic code to prevent replication or to stop replication of the virus, So what happens when it introduces errors, because it is an analog, doon sa pagre-replicate ng virus, it stops replicating or it introduces errors and then it dies. We call that lethal mutagenesis. That's the way it works. Ngayon, ang safety profile niya for immediate use is good. Walang major serious side effects. For the long-term use, hindi pa natin alam. That's number one. And specifically sa mga pregnant women, sa mga childbearing or women, because as I said, it introduces genetic errors. That's the mechanism of action. But based on their preliminary studies, preclinical studies, wala namang concern daw na it will be affecting the mammalian host or the host DNA. So ngayon, yun ang safety data. Ngayon, the efficacy data, about, I don't know, I think 3 weeks ago, when they released the data of the analysis sa gamot na to, there is a 50% reduction of outcomes of hospitalization and death. And then just before the FDA met, dito sa America, the Merck put a statement after their final analysis of their interim data, the 50% bumaba ng 30%. So, yung 30% na nare-reduce yung chance na ma-hospital pa mamatay ka. So, it's not as good as, for example, the monoclonal, which is quoted or estimated to have 70 to 80% efficacy. Ito, 30%. But the advantage here is it's an oral medication. It's taken for 5 days. It's 4 pills twice a day for 5 days. Within 5 days of onset of symptoms. So
yung compliance dito, compliance is very good because oral,
Yeah. So, at saka madali, pwede kong mag-treat dyan sa bahay.
Sa bahay, diba?
Hindi mo na kailangan i-hospital. So, but the challenge here is, pasyente mo, nagkasakit ka lang, magpa-test ka. So, the testing also needs to be optimized para magamit siya. Kung hintay mo, matagal pa yung resulta, mamimiss mo yung window. Diba? So, but it's very promising. Now, there is another drug that is, Pfizer, from Pfizer, that is actually, they release. It's a different mechanism. We're more familiar with it. It's a protease inhibitor. It inhibits yung enzyme na kailangan para mag-replicate yung virus. And the initial analysis dito is that it can, decrease the rate or risk reduction of, about 89%. So it's a little bit higher. Again, I haven't really seen the data myself, and hopefully that is still the same after, when they provide the application to the FDA. So.
Yeah, that's very promising, I mean, I know meron na dumating na molnupiravir sa atin, di ba? Dito sa Pilipinas. So.
Yes, Doc.
So,
and then that's another thing too, no? I want to point, especially with the variant that's circulating, because it doesn't directly target the S protein, which has all these mutations. it is predicted that it will be effective against the variants,
Uh-huh.
including Omicron.
Yeah.
And again, the only way to definitely say that is to test it, but the way by design, it's
Okay.
predicted that it should be effective. So it's really, this is something to celebrate, in terms of progress in science. In addition to vaccine, we have this promising treatments.
You're very good. Yung mga kababayan, so look this very promising, no, pagdating po sa management ng COVID, no, we're now giving you scientific data now, studies, and then ito, science-based na po ito, Kagaya po ng sinasabi ng ating kaibigan na kababayan, si Dr. Armand Paes, is that really face mask works. Ayaw lang mag-face mask ni Mayor Jay. Di ako meron din. Nahihirapan ako magsalita. Tsaka nag-disinfect kami, Arman, dito. Medyo, safe daw, sabi nila.
So ang ano dito, syempre, it's hard to always kind of generalize. You have to look around. Yung ventilation is very important.
Yeah,
Right? So sabi ko nga, kung yung air hindi nagsisirculate lang, walang ventilation, kung nasa bahay ka, bukas mo yung bintana mo,
Yes, correct.
it will actually help. That's why yung outdoor, and we have science to back that up. Sa outdoor setting, it's less likely to transmit it, So you don't, if you're vaccinated, you don't even need to really wear mask. Unless in a crowded setting, even outdoors, kailangan mo. Kasi kung minsan, baka bigla kang mahingahan sa mukha mo,
Yeah.
di ba? So that's really a risk. Pero kung naglalakad ka lang, nasa outdoor ka, it is reasonably safe.
Yeah.
You know?
So do you recommend any particular mask or something? Kasi mga high-tech yung mga mask. Tingnan mo. May mga filter, may mga speaker. It is more of convenient ba? Or do you have any particular?
No, I mean, of course, yung N95, di ba?
The same, yung pa rin,
That's
yung
a
pa
very
rin.
effective
Oo.
mask, no? There's a certification, for testing of each mask. For N95, that means certified siya na 95% of the time na filter na. Pero ito, syempre, in high-risk situations, that includes healthcare settings, di ba? Kasi, you take care of people who are sick, who have COVID, and you have to wear that. Along with the other protection, yung eye shield, of course, less likely to transmit sa mga surfaces, but it's not zero, because virus can also stay alive, for depending on what type of surface. So you have the full gear PPE. Ngayon, with regards to the other types of mask, yung surgical mask, it's good enough to actually filter most of the potential exposure in the public areas, Yun naman mga nakita mong mga double mask. Yeah, the question here is how much more it can protect you on top of just a regular mask. You can just buy another surgical mask, you just double it. It's also effective, much more effective than a single mask. So again, depende dun sa situation mo. Kung high-risk situation ka, I think it's reasonable to use more than just a face or a cloth mask. You can use the real surgical mask.
Kamukha ni Jun, mga mask nito, mga Gucci, Louis Vuitton, nakita ko pagka nasa labas. Iba yung... Anyway, so, yan po mga kabayan. So, nire-recommend po na ating expert, really, is really wear mask, please, no? Lalong-lalo na po pagka nasa indoors tayo, no? At nasa ibang lugar, no? And then, yung pong social distancing is very important, no? Of course, yung washing, yung frequent washing, isa pa rin pong importante minimum health standards. Mga kababayan, ito, of course, yung pong vaccination, no? Wag po na tayo mag-atubili, no? Wag na po tayo mamili ng bakuna sapagkat alam po naman natin na lahat po ito ay gumagana, it works, it's safe, it's free. So, Arman, tanong ko lang, how about for the mix and match, for example, pagdating sa mga boosters? What are the recommended, kasi dito, siyempre, kami, no choice kami kasi because of the supply issue. But again, do you recommend other concoction, like for example, for the mix and match for boosters?
It's a very good. It's so funny, Nung sabi mo, nambitahan mo ako, nako, I have to kind of prepare for this talk, So actually, I went to the DOH, and there's actually November 15. DOH, November 15, there's a circular that was circulated by the DOH. Page 6 to 7 actually lists the mix and match. It's an interim guidance for the clinicians, which actually gives recommendations kung anong mabibigay mo doon sa nakakuha ng Sinovac, for example, sa kung Pfizer, sa Moderna, kung ano yung pwede at ano yung pwede din na iiwasan mong ibigay.
Correct.
So that DOH document, I think for those who are involved in vaccination, that is something that you can always refer to. But in general, alam nyo naman ang vaccines depende sa the platform that they use, diba? May iba tayong klaseng vaccine, for example, yung inactivated vaccine.
Okay.
Like for example, yung Sinovac, you have this mRNA vaccine platforms, yung Moderna, Pfizer, at meron ka din naman yung mga vectored vaccines, katulad ng AstraZeneca, at pati itong Janssen o yung J&J. So, yun, I don't want to be technical, pero they perform clinical trials using those platforms, and they have different efficacy rates, based on the population that they studied. Remember, wala pang Delta noon, di ba? And actually, nung dumating yung Delta, yung predicted efficacy rates bumaba across the board sa platform. Okay? So ngayon, dahil yung platform ng vaccine, siyempre, kanya-kanyang kumpanya yan, hindi nila pinapakailaman yung ibang kumpanya, di ba? But the reality is that, when you are in a pandemic, you have to use what you have. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Hindi ka naman pwedeng makapamili. So, ang problema, nagkahalo-halo na walang masyadong guidance. And to the exasperation and frustration of a lot of people, they're asking, anong gagawin ko?
Correct.
And wala din naman sabi mga ibang mga policy makers or guidance because we don't have any clinical data. And remember, we are in a pandemic. It's not really our fault in the same token. But we have to make a decision, just like anything else. Yung pasyente mo, nasa harap mo, you have to make a decision, di ba? So,
yes.
It's a best guess, without malice. It's just the best case scenario that you want to kind of come up with. Some have used different strategies, some have not, but the best thing to do first is that if there is a study with regards to mix and match, you try to replicate that study in order to have some guidance and predictability of efficacy. For example, sa UK, di ba, sila yung una nag-AstraZeneca. They found na pag Pfizer ang second dose mo, mas effective kesa kung bibigyan ka ulit ng AstraZeneca. Then, kung ganun ang situation mo, and if it's allowed, you can do that, right?
Yeah.
Because you have some science behind that. Ngayon, kung tulad naman sa booster shot, di ba? What they found too is the same. Yung tinatawag nilang hybrid immunity, So, kumbaga, iba-iba pa kasi ang target ng vaccines. Pagka itong vaccine na itong ginamit to, pag hinaluan mo, yung booster, iba din naman yung tawag nila. They found that some of those mix and match actually gives a better response. For example, sa J&J, pagka ang ginamit mong booster is mRNA vaccine, it has a better response kesa kung bibigyan mo ng second dose ng J&J
there. Or homologous.
Yeah, exactly. But it's hard to say that with all the vaccine platform, I can just mix and match. No. You try to search and read on, is there any information in this type of mix, Kasi kung it's really going to the dark, hindi mo alam. And of course, the initial concern is of course safety, right? Ano yung safety noon. So far, maraming taong gumagawa ng mix and match. So far, wala pa naman ako narinig at least na yung side effects is more than if they use the same vaccine. So,
how about Army? How about experiences of side effects of your vaccination?
So far po, yung mga reklamo or yung mga reports, pain on injection site, redness, Tapos meron din po yung iba. Ako kasi parang flu-like symptom
Aha.
yung sa akin. Personal experience.
Yeah, tsaka marami nakaka-headache, with it.
Yeah,
Sometimes, minsan masakit pa yung kilikili nila, Kung minsan nga, akala nila nagkakaroon ng, di ba, lymph node, tapos minsan pa nga, akala nila cancer. Kaya later on, nagkakaroon ng concern about, more workup for that. And actually, it's just a response doon sa vaccination. Yung tatawag nila reactogenicity, which is the side effect that is expected
Yeah.
from the vaccination. Yeah.
Wala pa namang untowards side effect, Army. Wala.
Meron po among yung elderly, pero kasi po mukhang it is related to the comorbidity.
Okay.
Hypertension, ganun.
How about in children? I mean, how about what's your in vaccine, pediatric vaccination? Sila Leslie, your
Yeah, kasi PJG is handling yung comorbidities
11.
Otherwise normal sa community. So
far, okay naman, sir. May mga minomonitor lang na symptoms, pero wala namang major.
How about cases? Pedia cases?
Sir,
During the
wala,
surge?
Wala kami na yun.
Oh.
Currently, we have 0 patients sa COVID ward.
Before.
Sir, tumaas kami.
Tumaas kayo?
Yes, sir. Opo.
Mortality?
Meron din, sir. Yung mga may comorbidity. Yun yung nagkaroon ng mortality.
June, question kay Dr. Arman before we wrap up.
Well, so far natanong na naman po lahat, Doctor. So far wala na pa.
Tinatanong dito, Arman, is he single?
Meron na akong asawa
He's
at
married. So again, sabi ko nga, so we're really glad and fortunate to have you here. Sana maulit din ito in the near future. So, kung kailan ka ba huling umuwi, Arman?
Well, before the pandemic, parati kami umuwi dyan almost every year. Lalo na
talaga?
mga maliliit pa yung anak ko. Yeah, and then, siyempre yung kapatid ko, si Dr. Donato.
Yeah, si Sasa, yeah.
Laging pwedeng, binabati ko lang si Ate Sasa. Who's my lovely sister dyan. Ophthalmologist siya dyan.
Yeah,
So, I'm sure kilala siya dyan. So, in any case, alam mo naman, pag bakasyon, hindi mo makakalimutan ng Pilipinas dahil Pilipino pa rin naman tayo, di ba? So, I always, plan to visit along with my family.
Yeah, sana. So we can meet you. Ha? Question daw si Army.
Sir, last question po. Pasensya na.
Yes.
Since we have been doing the vaccination program and also the COVID response, we have all the data. We're trying to come up with we are trying to make sense of all the data that we have. So my question is, do you have studies there in terms of yung vaccine individuals and yung incidence of COVID among vaccinated individuals? Kasi po, in our case, yung Cabanatuan City experience, way back before the vaccine, so we have data on COVID cases. And then came last March, yung vaccination, nag-start po kami. We're trying to document or to research on the cases na simula March, meron ba dun sa mga binakunahan na namin na against COVID ang magkakaroon or magkaka-COVID? Sa inyo po ba, meron po bang research kayong ginawa regarding this or may ongoing research? Maybe you can help us put us on the right direction in terms of making sense of all of this data. Thank you po.
Yes. So again, it's a very loaded question. For in terms of research, I haven't done any research on this, but I have read, and I know some data even from experience about breakthrough infections. Yun yung tinatawag nilang after vaccination, nagkakaroon ka na infection. So what we know, as I said, yung mga breakthrough infections most of the time will be mild or asymptomatic kasi somehow vaccination will protect you from getting very, very sick. But what they found with the Delta, that is the major variant that's circulating, is if one gets infected even after vaccination, the level or the amount of virus in the nasopharynx, is almost the same as unvaccinated. So that has some implication in terms of transmission. In addition to that, yung Delta, because of its mutations, mas nag-a-attach siya doon sa host cell and hence increased transmissibility. So with your specific question, how much or how many breakthrough infections in a vaccinated population, it will depend on several factors, right? So as I said, if we're talking about Delta, iba din naman sa Alpha o sa Beta, di ba? But I guess Delta is the default right now. Second is the host, ano ba, matanda ba, may mga sakit ba, anong population ang inaaral natin, and what is the risk of breakthrough infection in those populations, di ba? So magkakaiba yon. So what we know is that pag mas matanda ka, mas hindi ka nagre-respond or yung level of immunity from vaccination is much lower habang mas matanda ka, meaning to say, 85 years old different from 60, different from 40. So the risk of breakthrough infections by just alone, the host alone, is higher in the extreme of ages, for example. In the younger population, it has a more robust response. That's why hindi pa nga in the younger individuals, 18 years old and younger, booster is not even talked about because we know, based on what data suggests right now, is that they have a good response to the vaccines. They don't need the booster at this point in time. So what we know is that even at the state level or even sa ospital na nagkakasakit at na-hospital, merong porsyento na breakthrough infections, meaning to say, nabaksinahan na sila pero nagkasakit pa rin na malubha. And those are really patients who are very sick to start with. May heart failure, mayroong COPD, and those, they tend, even if it's quote-unquote mild COVID, they tend to decompensate, or what we call, it gets worse right away. So the ratio in hospitalized patients, even across the state, for example, in Massachusetts, we're talking about 20 to 30% among hospitalized patients who got COVID, 20 to 30% are vaccinated. The rest are mostly unvaccinated. So majority pa rin is unvaccinated, and about 20 to 30% have been vaccinated, but mostly they haven't really gotten the booster shot. So,
Thank you very much, sir. So actually, sir, hindi pa conclusive din yung data gathering namin dito, pero more or less, ganun din yung outlook. Merong mga nagkaka-positive cases pa rin na despite vaccinated na sila, pero yung going into severe, hindi ganun kadami.
Meron kaming, yung 1 or 2 cases wherein there's a breakthrough infection, no? Ang tawag namin sa long COVID. Diba? After the 14 days confinement, and then siguro may mga comorbidities ito, after 2 weeks, came back to the hospital with full-blown pneumonia. So, yung mga ganong kaso.
So, you mentioned about long COVID. That's actually a very good question. So, in America, they reserve that long COVID, or what we call the post-COVID syndrome. So, after they recover from the acute infection, they still have lingering symptoms. Most of them have some respiratory symptoms. Iba nade-depress din, even a year after the infection. And that's another thing too. I want to mention. They also notice this even in mild infections. If you got COVID, sometimes naiba ka na ng infection. You feel more tired than usual. Hinihingal ka, and it was just a mild infection. And if you have persistent symptoms after 4 months of infection, even if it's mild or even severe, for example, you are not hallucinating. It's actually a described syndrome, what we call a long COVID or a post-COVID syndrome. So,
and most of our experience in our patients also yung mga panic attack. Di ba kasama na yung depression and everything. they're good,
Yeah.
they're doing good, and then after seeing some studies, di ba? Nagkakaroon ng panic, and then that really nagka-crash na kagad. So yun ang mga nakikita namin patients.
Yeah, so I want to mention too, ito, very important, thank you for mentioning that, because mental health is very important. You know?
Correct,
This
correct,
is one
yeah.
thing that even in even rich countries still, suffer in many of these, yung isolation, for example. Imagine mo, magkakasakit ka, wala kang bisita, yun na pala yung huling pagkikita ninyo.
Correct.
I mean, just imagine that. And then you lose control of your decision. Somebody just lock you up in the room. Nobody
Yeah.
can see you.
That's
and
true.
then normally, kung very sociable ka, bigla ka na nasa doon, tapos mamamatay ka na pala. I mean, that's like the most miserable thing that can
That's
happen
true.
to
Yeah.
somebody.
It's a good
And
point,
then-
actually. Yeah.
Diba? I mean, and I can see that even yung mga hindi nagkaka-COVID, just being isolated,
Yeah.
that's why there's an increased rate of suicide and mental health. And I
Correct.
think that's also something that we need to talk about, related to pandemic is mental health, because that's very important, really. So,
That's a good point. Actually, that's our observations. A lot of the lockdown. Imagine the uncertainty in going home to your community, yung readjustments. No, ayaw kang pansinin ng kapitbahay mo, mga kamag-anak mo, iniiwasan ka. so, di ba? So, well, again, so medyo 9:30 na. May susunod yung programa ni Pio. Arman's really, really fortunate and glad for you having us with today, no? Thank you very much for the much needed information, and kudos to you. And sabi nga natin, mga kababayan, ito, taga-Kabanatuan to, kababayan natin. I'm very glad. We're getting so much information. Ang dami naming natutunan. And we hope that our kababayan also learn from this session, no? And we're looking forward to, no, for the next, siguro sa mga susunod na panahon, we can invite you in person, face to face na.
Of course.
Aguhin mo. Aguhin mo.
pwede ba bumate?
Sure.
Hindi, babatiin ko muna siyempre asawa ko si Rosette,
Yeah.
anak ko si Lexi and Adrian. So, gabi dito siguro kumakain sila sa taas.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
Hello.
mga kamag-anak ko dyan, mga kaibigan ko, kaklase ko, So, good
Yeah.
morning sa inyo lahat.
And then we can watch it sa live streaming sa Cab TV, no? Pwede natin i-replay to. So, every now and then. And then, of course, I'd like to thank Sasa again. Nakuha ko yung number mo, Arman, sa kanya, no? And then, of course, kay Ricky. Kumusta na lang kay Ricky din? Matagal-tagal na rin kami hindi nakikita niyan. Yan ang mga kababata ko. Huwag yun na itanong kung ilang edad kami, ha? Huwag yun na itanong. So, thank you. May, thank you very much. May, Leslie, June. I hope that really very, very, very happy and then very proud, no, to have a Kabatuenos reaching our show, and like to see him soon, no? So face to face na sana tayo next time. And fearless forecast ba? Meron na. Nagbigay na ng fearless forecast si Arman eh. So, it will be, sabi nga ni Army, baka ngayon, magandang Christmas because of the vaccination effort of the city, thanks to Mayora Maika and POJ and Ma'am Ria. And talagang very much, talagang ang drive natin rito is really go for total 65%, 75% before the year ends. Oh, good. That's good. And then June, thank you very much also. Arman, thank you. Thank you. So, we'll see you.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
sir.
mga kababayan, yan po ang ating pong guest, si Dr. Arman Paez. Isa pong tunay na taga-Kabanatuan na nagbigay sa atin ng information, updates. Ito po, sabi nga nila, based on science po lahat ito. Napakabalaking bagay po ng mask, no? Tandaan nyo po, ha? It will really prevent yung spread ng virus, at ito po ay, sabi ko nga kanina, ang papabakuna po ay isa po nating responsibilidad, no? Bilang Pilipino, na tayo po ay magpabakuna. Hindi lamang po para sa ating sarili, sa ating mahal sa buhay, kundi sa ating kapwa-tao na nakakasama natin sa araw-araw. So again, Nagpapasalamat po ako sa ating mga guests, doon po sa ating crew dito sa DWJJ. Maraming salamat sa inyo at magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Thank you very much. See you next Saturday.